1992 was a colossal year in PC gaming. A lot of standards are being set, with groundbreaking games being released all over the shop. Be warned, I'm going to say granddaddy a lot in this here video. During the year, where the only thing being put into a mouth in the Oval Office was a saxophone, and the seeds of Brexit were being sown in Maastricht, some of us wondered if we were worthy of so many great PC games.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're scum! We suck!
I'm the Geeky Dad, and this is a history of PC gaming. Ideas from the deep were about to dominate the PC gaming market in a big way, but in 1992 they released a precursor to the game that would go on to change gaming forever. Wolfenstein 3D was not a 3D game in the truest sense of the word. John Carmack had developed a revolutionary technique using raycasting, where only the surfaces visible to the player are calculated rather than the whole area surrounding the player. This raycasting feature was the basis of Wolfenstein 3D game engine, and id developed a game which has been branded the granddaddy of first-person shooters. The initial concept for the game was just to mow down Nazis. The aforementioned John Carmack developed the game's core within about a month. John Romero then took the core and added art and levels to the overall product. Romero was influenced by Pac-Man, and even included a hidden Pac-Man level as homage to the great arcade game. As development continued on the game, id were contacted by the developers of the original Wolfenstein game from 1981, who stated they were worried about the level of violence and shock content. As a result of this communique, id increased the violence and shock content. Carmack added skeletons, corpses, and gory wall details, while Romero added screams and cries in German, as well as a death cam showing the replay of the final boss's death in each episode. The game also courted some controversy, with it being the principal cause of video games not being exempt from Germany's stringent Strafgesetzbuch section 86A. Pretty sure I nailed that. The game was subsequently banned as the German Software Ratings Board refused to give it a rating. Wolfenstein followed the Apogee model of software sales. Just like Commander Keen before it, this game was a shareware game. Apogee published the game for id and gave away the first episode of the game for free. Users would then purchase the next 3 episodes of the game from Apogee via a telephone line. Later, after the release of 3 further expansions for the game, the whole collection could be purchased at retail. I remember having a lot of fun with Wolfenstein 3D. We only had the shareware version, but exploring and shooting was a heady cocktail for a young pre-teen like myself. I also remember my dad getting oddly annoyed at me for stabbing an attack dog in the face and saying, "Die you doggy scum." Strange man. Upon release, Wolfenstein 3D was an instant success. id estimated that over 1 million shareware copies of the game were out in the wild. On top of that, they had managed to sell 150,000 episodes and a further 150,000 retail versions by mid-1994. Wolfenstein took the video game world by storm and established a lot of the rules of the first-person shooter genre. The game was fast-paced and required technical prowess from its players. All these elements would be present in the next big release from id Software, which would go down as an epic change to video gaming in general. Up until 1992, Westwood Studios had some success adapting tabletop games to PC gaming. Their Battletech and Eye of the Beholder series, which was based on Dungeons & Dragons, were well liked for what they were. However, in 1992, they would go on to release a game which became the standard by which all real-time strategy games were judged. While not the first real-time strategy by any means, RTS games after Dune 2 were very similar to the Westwood game. Dune 2 is also, possibly, the most successful adaptation of the Frank Herbert universe. However, I might be kicking up a bit of a hornet's nest by saying that. Still, I think there's too much to talk about with this game, so I'll make a companion video in the series I've got called Games That Changed the Game. In a slight change to the format of these videos, we're going to talk about a game that wasn't well received when it was released. Championship Manager was released in 1992, but the first iteration of the much beloved series was roundly panned by critics. Even by the standards of the day, the graphics were below par. Critics and gamers also bemoaned the lack of real player names in the game. All names in the game were created using a random name generator, and the match engine was very basic when compared with contemporary management games such as Premier Manager. So why am I covering the release of a subpar management game? Well, it's because of the legacy of the Championship Manager series. With each release in the series, the game grew in reputation and features. By the release of Championship Manager 4 in 2003, it had become the fastest selling PC game of all time. The team behind Championship Manager went on to create Football Manager after Eidos bought the rights to the Championship Manager brand. Between the two franchises, over 24 million units have been sold worldwide. Almost all other competitors to these games have fallen by the wayside, and Football Manager has become the pinnacle of football management games. This whole world domination started in 1992 with a game that most people thought was subpar. 1992 saw the release of the granddaddy of survival horror games. Infogrames published Alone in the Dark, which has been cited as a huge influence over the development of Resident Evil, and a lot of the concepts and design features are common to both games. Both games were sort of pseudo 3D, where the player character could walk around and interact with a 3D environment, but the camera position was static. The characters are also rendered in full 3D. The Alone in the Dark protagonist was rendered using polygons, and the backgrounds were rendered in 2D pixels. Unlike Resident Evil, however, the protagonists in Alone in the Dark did not actively fight any enemies, but rather you would try and hide from them or run away as the scene would dictate. Alone in the Dark was heavily focused on puzzle solving and exploration. The whole game is set in a mansion, with the emphasis on exploring the mansion, which is required to solve the puzzles to progress the game. The plot of the game revolves around a supposed suicide of a noted artist who owns a haunted mansion. The players take control of either Edward Carnaby or Emily Hartwood, both of whom had their reasons for investigating the suspicious suicide, as they go through the mansion attempting to solve the mystery. Each of the rooms had a set scene where the protagonists walked around, interacting with the scenery and items in their inventory. As the player progressed, more and more parts of the mansion were revealed. So far, so Resident Evil. Alone in the Dark was showered with praise upon its release, both from critics and from gamers who bought the game in their droves. In 5 years, the game had sold 600,000 copies. The game also won numerous awards. In 1993, it won the European Computer Trade Show Awards for Best Graphics, Most Original Game, and Best French Game. In the same year, it also won the Consumer Electronics Show Award for Best Foreign Game. Alone in the Dark continues to appear on lists of best games of all time and has a clear legacy. Not only did the game spawn multiple sequels of varying success, it was highly influential. It's been cited as a huge influence on both Resident Evil and Silent Hill franchises.